Hello, and thank you for being here again. Today I wanted to talk about evolution, which is often quite an edgy question when it comes to religious people. But I would like to look at it not in its usual form, where one merely looks back at evolution as something that happened way back in the past, but as what evolution actually means, an ongoing process. And so not only where we are now, but where evolution is set to take us from here onwards. Christians often have a problem with the theory of evolution, but I'll show why this is not really necessary. But we have an advantage as Christians in that our scriptures teach us, as I say, not only where we have come from, but also where we're going. John's Gospel, for example, begins with, "In the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Through him all things came to be, not one thing had its being but through him." And so he ends this introduction by saying in verse 12 of that first chapter of John's Gospel, "To all who did accept him," him being Jesus, "he gave power to become children of God." And so, as I say, as Christians, we can look both backwards and forwards at this evolution of our world and of our existence. Why I say that the theory of evolution does not run contrary to what we believe as Christians and all of those really in the Judeo-Christian tradition is that if we look at usually the objection to a creation narrative is people referring to the 7-day account of creation at the beginning of Genesis. Now that 7-day account of the beginning of the world was not ever meant to be a blow-by-blow account of how things came to be created. It was one of the last, in fact, Hebrew texts to be written and was then put at the beginning because it fitted in the beginning of the scriptures of the Torah so that people would know an essential truth. It was written, as I said, at a time that the Jews were taken into captivity in Babylon. And when they went into captivity, they were not allowed to take any of their writings with them or anything of their religion with them. And so what happened is the priests came up with a device to help people to remember their faith, to remember what they believed in. And they very cleverly chose something that was very recognizable to people at the time. And we see also how interesting it is that God can use us, even in our limited knowledge, to carry forward a truth. In this sense, we see that, for example, the account of the first day, the first thing God creates is light. And obviously at that time, without light, you could go nowhere. Because there was no electricity and so on, everybody stopped work when it got dark, and they couldn't start work again realistically until sunrise. And so this is why the light came first. We also see the limited knowledge of man in this account, in that the sun and moon were only created on the 4th day, whereas there was reference to morning and evening, the first day, second day, and so on. And this is, as I say, showing that the detail of exactly how it says things were created there is not what's important. What's important is that God created all things, and everything he created was good. This was the message they were getting across. There is obviously that final thing that we can see that shows that it's not meant to be a factual account, in that man was only created on the 6th day. And so who was it standing next to God to record all the other days if we take it as a blow-by-blow account? So as I say, what essentially our belief in the Judeo-Christian line is that God created all things and all things were good. What interests us particularly is where man came into this whole thing of evolution, because suddenly there was this huge step forward. Whereas before animals had developed and had become better at hunting and so on, and been able to survive and to dominate due to their physical prowess, suddenly here came an entity that we say was created by God, that man, who despite being far from one of the strongest animals in the world, was able to dominate all the others, even those way bigger than him, because here was a being who could think, who could reason, and who could develop, who could use his imagination to develop what he had into something useful for what he needed. And this was a huge change in evolution. That suddenly here was a creature who could build shelters, not merely find a shelter that was there, but build shelters for themselves and build all sorts of structures, as we know. And so things changed tremendously in the world as a result of this step in evolution, whenever that occurred. One note perhaps worthy of thought is that, of course, all of these claims about evolution over millions of years may or may not be true. It's very difficult for us to know how accurate or inaccurate they might be, because obviously the records on which this development was based are very recent, and we're only talking about, if we take the millions and millions of years that science talks about, we're only talking about the last millisecond of all those years, and we're taking that as the basis for working back and saying how long things must have taken. It would be, for example, if one were to look at a young man of the age of about 21, 22, when his growth is slowing, and then say, well, he only grew an inch in a year, and he's 6 foot tall, so therefore he must have been around for an awful long time. We can see that, it is difficult working only from very limited knowledge backwards. So, as I say, for us, what the important thing is not the how and so on, but the fact that God did create everything, and all that he created was good. In his book, Basic Christianity, C.S. Lewis gives us a very interesting insight, talking about where our future evolution lies. Because he refers then really to our future evolution being that passage in Scripture that says that to all who accept Christ, he gave power to become children of God. And so if we are merely looking for a linear evolution of the world and of man, well, then we might not expect that suddenly there's this huge change again in evolution, that whereas before evolution was controlled by God in our Christian view, and he allowed things to develop and he guided them through that development, suddenly he takes us and he gives us the choice of evolving further or not. Suddenly this being that he is given the power to think and to reason is given the power also to decide for himself and or herself where they will evolve from there, and whether they will accept this further evolution. This evolution that means that I don't try to control others and to have my own way by force, but I'm able to look beyond that, and I'm able to see that the real beauty, the real strength doesn't lie in physical force or in being the one who can make you suffer more than anyone else if you don't do what I want you to do. Real strength and real beauty lies in caring for one another, in being a person who doesn't look after themselves alone, but is there for other people. And we see this in our very hearts, because we know that seeing someone who's terribly strong and able to subdue other people physically very seldom moves us to tears. But when we find true goodness in someone, perhaps even someone close to us in our lives, who, more than anything else it seems, spends their lives being concerned about those around them, that can move us to tears. That can stir our hearts and make us really look at our lives again. And this is what we are called to see in our lives, that God is reaching out to us. He's offering us this chance to be new creatures, creatures who know how to live in a way that allows for the fact, not often looked at, that I cannot be perfectly happy while you're unhappy. My happiness cannot be built on your unhappiness. And that it's only in caring for one another that we will become these advanced creatures, able to share, to live in love, and to have a wonderful world for people to live in. But as I say, that choice is left up to us by God. He's not going to force us. He allows us to choose. And this is your choice to make in life, what you're going to do about your future evolution, how you're going to grow, and what sort of creature you're going to become along the way. And may God bless you. Thank you.